Yeah, we're about to start the Q&A. I believe there's nothing from the Zoomies just yet, but you have time, so we'll start in the room with any feedback or any observations. They don't have to be questions, because I'm not bound to know the answers, but I shall respond however I can. So this person's saying they've been an addict for 40 years to something, and he's not anymore, which is fantastic. That in itself is absolutely massive and shows enormous strength. I mean, I can't imagine how it must be, to come out of an addiction that you've had for so long. But the difficulty he's finding now is, excuse me, there's a lot of medication keeping him going, basically, with this COPD, which makes it difficult to breathe. And so that affects your mind, is that right? And it's hard to get that clarity and brightness.
I was free of anything. No drugs, no tobacco.
Yeah.
And it was in a cleared up space.
Sure, yeah, sure. But you weren't going to live very long. So sometimes we have to do the best with what we've got. We have to do the best with what we've got, It's amazing that you've overcome so much difficulty. And of course there may be some physical issues as a result of that, or they may have been there anyway. We don't know. We can't really ever go back in time to find out. But I think, meditation isn't by itself capable, even in the deep levels, of actually overcoming some physical diseases. Otherwise we'd still have the Buddha with us today at 2,600 years old. The body is subject to old age and sickness, and that's part and parcel of being a human being. So it doesn't matter how deep you think you're going in the meditation. There's a big difference between the brain and the mind. And it might be that your brain is more cloudy, that your thinking processes are affected by the medication. But the mind is still able to develop wholesome states. And I mean, for me too, with my chronic condition, it's harder to have enough time to practice and get into deep meditation when it's playing up. And I just have to accept that. But the fact is I can still be on the path. I can still be developing inner strength. And when the conditions change, you will have the chance. And this is where it's sometimes very helpful if you have a perspective of many lives. Because the mind is something that continues to evolve, if you like. It can continue to develop spiritual strength. And whatever you've developed in this life will be there next time. So even at the time of death, I mean, your mind seems quite bright and clear to me, but even for people with advanced stage dementia, at the time of death, there's this thing that doctors recognize around the world now called terminal lucidity, which is when the mind is starting to leave the body, starting to separate from the senses at the time of death. And suddenly there can be a moment of clarity, because the mind is almost freed from those things that keep it stuck. So there's a very interesting book. It's a bit of a side point, but it might be nice for you to read it. It's nice. It was nice for me. It's called After, and it's by a medical doctor who's written all about near-death experiences and people with all kinds of different conditions, different value systems, different lives. Some of them have had terrible lives, and they are actually drug addicts, or they are engaged in I think there's one who's a mafia guy, and he comes close to death. In fact, it's considered a medical death. And the mind leaves the body, and the mind is full of brightness, full of peace, full of love. And just reading this book gives me incredible confidence, in the power of the mind. And even people who hadn't lived particularly virtuous lives still had these experiences, but they came back changed. They came back and completely transformed their lives. So don't measure where you think you are based on, the current state of mind, especially if it's influenced by the medicines. It's a very superficial influence. And you can still make peace in every moment. You can still develop the right attitude to every moment, whatever it is. So the person's saying basically that they feel they can't do it. They can't do the meditation. And of course, we all know that that is trite. My answer is trite to say, you don't do the meditation. But I think it depends how we define meditation. I mean, the danger with giving talks like I did just now is that we're talking about certain landmarks, if you like, or certain experiences we may have from time to time across a lifetime or across several lifetimes, and we may not, but it's just to give a picture of the terrain. And it's really not to talk about these things as experiences and fixate on those, but to talk about how these things come about. And the way that meditation and I guess the transformative effects of meditation come about is through developing wise attitudes towards whatever happens in our mind. So when we think we can't do it, it's usually because we're expecting a particular result. But if we consider that meditation is just an opportunity to understand the mind, then actually, how can you fail? How can you not do that? You can just look in the mind, you close your eyes, you see that, okay, my mind is really playing up. It doesn't want to meditate, doesn't want to be with the breath. It wants to think, it wants to, conjure up all kinds of complexities for itself. That is just the result of causes. It's the fact that you're only on day 2 of a retreat. You've probably had a very busy life. So cut yourself some slack. You've been trying, you've been turning up here. And most probably, if you even reflect at the end of one meditation, you'll find you're a little bit quieter at the end. If you're not quieter, at least you're a little bit wiser as to the way the mind behaves. So these are the actual effects that are important, not the state of mind we have. And it's cumulative over time. So just have a bit of confidence. You're, developing right intention. You're observing precepts while you're here. You're doing good, basically. And you're bearing with something that's difficult. It's so easy for everybody else if they've got a quiet mind, but you're really developing much more strength by working with the difficulties. And that will start to show up in daily life with continued practice. So that's the important bit. How is it actually helping you in your life? So, don't be too hard on yourself. Okay, I'm going to come to the Zoom and take a couple of questions here. So, which would be a good book to read when we're starting on this path? So, wow. Well, there's lots of books you can read. I don't know, because I didn't really start with books, to be honest. I started with practice, so I didn't know very much about the theory. I was more interested in the experience, and for me, hearing the talks whilst I was meditating was very effective because it made sense of what I was experiencing. And it really depends on your inclination and what kind of methods appeal to you. So if you enjoy the practice of loving kindness, then perhaps you could read a book like Loving Kindness by Sharon Salzberg to get you going with that. If you're interested in general mindfulness, I could probably recommend Bhante Gunaratna's book. What's it called?
Mindfulness in Plain English.
Thank you. Mindfulness in Plain English. And if you're interested in this kind of method or the kind of path to samadhi states, I don't like any of these words, to be honest, but if you're interested in kind of everything we've been talking about today, then perhaps something like Mindfulness, Bliss and Beyond by Ajahn Brahm. There's a simplified version of that book called Kindfulness. It's pretty much the same content but a bit simpler. If you want to know more about wisdom, then The Art of Disappearing by Ajahn Brahm. It's not really a meditation book as such, but it's just quite a deep book generally about the process and about where this is leading to, about getting out of the way, really, as the title suggests. Books to read. I mean, of course, I do recommend gradually starting to read some suttas, and I started really getting into the suttas through listening to teachers discuss them from their own practice and understanding, and that for me brought it alive. This is just the way I work. I like to have a practical application. So you could listen to some talks by Ajahn Brahm or Ajahn Brahmali or myself on the suttas, and we have a sutta class on Fridays which goes through Bhikkhu Bodhi's book, Social and Communal Harmony, which is really nice because it just gives you some little paragraphs grouped together around certain themes such as personal training, dealing with resentment and anger, conflict resolution, establishing an equitable society, spiritual friendship, etc. And it has a few suttas on each. But it does bring it to life when you're with a group and you're discussing that and how it applies to your daily life. So that's a few ideas. I think any more ideas is probably too much. But look around. If you're more academic, perhaps, and you want to get really into the heart of things, then there's something by Walpola Rahula called What the Buddha Taught. It's a kind of classic book that covers meditation generally. And I think he's Sri Lankan. So it's quite traditional, a traditional kind of exposition of the Buddha's teachings, but it's pretty accurate as well. So hope that helps. And there's another question here. Time is so short, I have to say, but we have time. How do you transform the experience of suffering when people are lying, mean, and steal from you what you need to live off? When compassion and feeling sensations or being aware of thoughts and emotions and inquiring into the nature of cause is not bringing relief and removing fear or panic? Yeah, well, sometimes, even though it's understandable that you want the compassion and the feeling sensations and the awareness to bring some relief, if we meditate in order for those things to dissolve, to disappear, we may be bringing some aversion into it. So the idea is we meditate to understand, and the alleviation comes as a result of that. We don't meditate actually to pacify these things. It's a subtle difference, but it's an important difference. Because otherwise you can't really be present. If you're being present in order that things change or that things get easier, then you're not really accepting the moment as it is. So the compassion has to be really genuine, in the sense of, I'm going to be kind to you no matter what, whether you stay, whether you leave, no matter how much this hurts, I'm just here for you. It's the kind of compassion that a mother would have for a child that comes home really unwell. Maybe they've fallen or they've argued with a friend and they just want to cry. And your job as a mom, of course, you want to give them some comfort, but you don't say, oh, okay, I'll give you comfort for 5 minutes as long as you stop crying, you know? That wouldn't really be very kind. You're just there for the child for as long as they need you to be. An ideal mother, right? Or father, or anyone else. So you really have to learn to embrace these things and to be with them and give yourself that care and that understanding, you know. Sometimes I offer myself outright empathy in terms of speaking kindly. So, for example, if people are lying and mean and steal, I actually say, you know, it's understandable. I mean, they haven't done that to me, but, you know, when things happen and I'm suffering from that, instead of judging it, I say to myself, well, it's understandable that this would hurt. You know, it's quite understandable. And then I ask myself, what do I need right now? What do I need? And sometimes you just need a hug, or you just need that understanding from yourself, that empathy, that space to feel what you feel. And if it's really genuine compassion and empathy, then you do already feel some relief. So that's one thing you can do. To tend to those feelings, first of all. And over time you'll find things do change on their own. You can also, I think, when there's a lot of obvious suffering like that, I think doing metta or compassion for yourself is really effective. And again, it has to be genuine. You're giving to yourself just to give, not to make it go away. I hope that makes some sense. Okay. All right, another question from here. Yes. So the question is about remorse as a hindrance, and this person is saying that it's the first time they've heard of it been discussed as a hindrance because they found it quite helpful in order to learn from the experience and to perhaps not do that again, even though they still have some there that they may be keeping there, kind of thing, because they feel that it's in a way like a kind of protection somehow against making similar mistakes. Yeah. So something. Yeah, sort of like that. A guide. Yeah, a guide. Yeah. So As a hindrance, it's not the healthy kind of remorse. As a hindrance, it's the kind of remorse that just keeps coming up in the mind, that you're kind of playing over again and again and again, and you feel guilt and you feel so kind of bad about it, and you don't have proper resolution. So in the Buddha's teachings, and especially for monastics, he gave a very clear procedure by which we can acknowledge whatever it is that we've done, and then basically forgive ourselves and let it go. And in the Sangha, if we're living with other monks and nuns, we have a recourse to that. We actually can not only have the chance to forgive ourselves, but feel that forgiveness from those around us too, receive that forgiveness, and that really helps. So it is important to be able to acknowledge. Otherwise, you know, of course, if you have some kind of sociopathy, then one of the signs of that is no remorse, right? So we're not talking about not having a conscience, a moral conscience. There's something also called hiri or tapa in the Buddha's teachings, which are part and parcel of virtue, and it is often translated as moral fear and moral dread, which I think is terrible, but terrible translation. I prefer to see it as moral conscience and moral caution. So that could be something similar to what you're describing there. I don't think you're describing remorse as a hindrance. I think you're describing remorse as fairly a positive guide in your life. But still, there are things that we might be carrying more than we need, especially if they happened a long, long time ago and we've really moved on from that. So perhaps, as well as having that in the background, we could also learn to bring up the beautiful things we've done and learn to rejoice in the virtue. That's equally as much a guide and as much a protection for the mind as holding on to the regret. So, yeah.
That is something else that I have got out of this retreat, which is, again, a new thing. So just celebrating the virtuous things.
Yeah. Gorgeous, yeah. So celebrating the virtuous things, she was saying, is something she's got out of this retreat, and it's much more balanced, isn't it? You know, it's like with the practice of the Brahma Viharas, we can look at the world in terms of the suffering people experience and develop a lot of compassion, but without the celebratory mudita, the rejoicing in the goodness in the world, it's kind of one-sided. And the same thing if we were only ever practicing kind of rejoicing joy, sympathetic joy with people's happiness, it would be, you know, ignoring a lot of the suffering that's also there. So in the same way, internally, I think we have to have, you know, both. We have to be able to sort of commiserate and offer ourselves empathy, or maybe, look at the mistakes we've done from time to time and learn, but at the same time celebrate our successes, celebrate, you know, the beautiful intentions and deeds that we do, and encourage our mind, uplift the mind with that as well. So, yeah. I think in our culture we're much more likely to dwell on the things we've done wrong than to celebrate the other stuff. So it might be good to balance it a bit. Yeah. Thanks for the question. It's great. Anything else from the Zoom room? I don't see anything yet. Okay. So how about from here? We've got a couple of questions. Easy one. Easy to answer. So this person's asking, there's a lot of stuff online, but how do you find a teacher? And they are attracted to Ajahn Brahm's teachings. In short, yes. And so that's what I'm trying to do here, trying to develop a community. It's not that you have to come to my community, but quite often it's hard to find a teacher. I mean, I don't really know any teachers that will formally take on a disciple, simply because there might be some who are very, very well supported already, but generally speaking, they're engaged with their own trainees, if you like. So, you know, the people around Ajahn Brahm, the people he's trained, he can give some guidance to. But, I mean, I get quite a lot because I'm establishing a monastery over here and we're pretty close. Like, it's a close teacher-student relationship, but I know it's very rare. And, you know, not many people have that privilege. So what do we do without that? I think the answer is community, and building communities, you know, like anything like Sheffield Insight or monasteries where you can go and you're sure to meet people who at least are practicing the path. So what I'm trying to do in Oxford, and what we are doing actually, is develop a monastery there where people can come and stay, and they can develop relationships not only with me but with each other as well. And there's quite a few people in the Zoom room here who've been part of that community for years, even before we had a place. And they do come and visit, and they do feel like they know me because of all the teachings I've given, and they meet me from time to time, but they get to know each other, which is the most beautiful thing about this project, that we're actually creating spiritual communities that support everybody who is a part of that. So that's very much alive here, and of course I'm trying to, I'm basically Ajahn Brahm's disciple, so I try to teach, what I've learned from him. And you can look around, and just see where you gravitate towards. I mean, sometimes we do have to make use of it being online if we live far away, but other times you can come and stay in monasteries. Even retreat centres, that's harder because the teachers change all the time. But if there is somebody that you feel their teachings resonate for you, you can try to book in on all their retreats. There's someone on this Zoom room, he says he's booked into all my retreats this year. And I'm sure that happens at Gaia House and other retreat centres as well. But in the end, the Buddha did say that let the Dhamma Vinaya be your teacher. He passed away. I mean, he couldn't be there forever for all his disciples, and what he left was the Dhamma. So, I mean, Ajahn Brahmali and Ajahn Brahm, especially Ajahn Brahmali, really emphasise making the Buddha your teacher, because he's the one is enlightened. I mean, if you have that kind of faith, and I think most people here probably think he knows something, right? Otherwise, you might not be here. I mean, who would I be, or who would any of these teachers be? We can't just make it up. So, if you can establish a relationship with the Buddha through the ways I suggested, joining online discussions or getting into the suttas, then this also can be very helpful. And it'll help you choose wisely as well who you want to learn from. Okay. Oh, yes. I'll come to you and then we'll come to the Zoom. Yeah. So this person's asking, in daily life when the seeds of suffering come up, what do we do? Because we can't always sit down and meditate, and generally they do rely on their practice, sitting or walking, to still the mind. But obviously that's not a solution for every situation. Yeah, is that a good surmise? So do we apply other aspects of the path, which is of course the answer. And particularly you asked what I do. So one of the things I do, which keeps me kind of pretty occupied, is I serve a lot. So even if there's suffering, I mean, sometimes it's actually too much, because sometimes I'm so equanimous in a sense to the suffering and to being tired that I just keep serving. And only at the end I realise, actually, I should have had a rest earlier. That's my own little thing to work with. But one of the things I really appreciate about being engaged in Dhamma service is that it's very hard to have negative thoughts. You're really thinking all the time about how to, even if it's mundane things like fiddling with a website, which I have no idea about, it's still for the purpose of getting a message out there to spread the Dhamma, and that's very beautiful. So that's a kind of way of not getting sucked in to any suffering that might be arising in my little world. I can go out and help someone else. If it is arising in my mind sort of as a maybe a psychological issue, say there's anger or irritation, or I'm getting negative about my situation, I just try to use sense restraint the way I understand it in terms of guarding the mind. There's the sense restraint that seeks to quieten the senses, but there's a protective kind of use of the senses which tries to look at the other angle of a situation. So instead of seeing the faults in a person or in our life or in whatever it is that we experience, we try to look at it from a Dhamma perspective. If it's suffering, we can try and reframe it in the context of the Four Noble Truths. Okay, so now I'm experiencing the first one. Okay, good. I know I'm experiencing it. I also know there's a cause. It's not going to last. And this is something that other people experience as well. So perhaps if I can really feel this and allow it to be, I can have more compassion towards myself and also other people who must be feeling the same. You can always try to develop these right motivations towards whatever you're experiencing. So just to add kindness there, to the way you're regarding whatever it is. I think tomorrow, there might not be time, but I was hoping to talk a little bit about ways of overcoming anger and resentment. And one way you can do that, if you don't have time to sit and practice loving kindness, is just to think about that person in a kinder way. So instead of focusing again on their faults and things that irritate you, you can remember maybe things they've done to you that were kind, or qualities that you notice in them. They won't have every quality, but they may have some, and something you can respect. So we just try to look at another angle to overcome some of that suffering. So there's a few ideas. Yeah, I hope that helps. Now we only have 5 minutes and I have 2 quite chunky questions here, so I shall come to the Zoom room. Okay, good afternoon to you too. After years of meditation, Burmese mostly, in other words methods that are taught in Burma, due to illness, pain and work stress, I changed meditation. Now I practice this meditations and those of Ajahn Brahm. Lots of metta, more than anything else. Yay! Lots of metta, can't go wrong. I spend a few hours on breaths with an empty mind. How often do you do this? You must have a lot of practice if this is every day. This is wonderful. And this makes me go away from pain and feel very good. I know peace and serenity. Is that okay? Yes. It's really okay. It's funny, isn't it, that we ask, is it okay to feel peace and serenity? We don't usually say, is it okay to feel suffering and pain and all? It's like, yeah, I have to do that. I have to feel the pain and suffering. I'm not sure about the peace and serenity. It's fine. It's fine. It's good. It's good. Because if you were, meditating for results, you probably wouldn't feel that peace and serenity. It's a natural outcome of your practice. Having done a lot of noting with the Mahasi method, I'm afraid of making mistakes, but at the moment I'm doing very well. Yeah, I mean, if you're enjoying the meditation, it's leading to peace, it's leading to serenity, that's fine. Try not to get attached to it in a sense, or maybe not attached is not the right word, but try not to evaluate it. I mean, you say you're doing well and it's great, but the danger with that is that if that doesn't happen, you might not think you're doing very well, but you're always doing well. You're always doing well. And I think whatever meditation you did before will have given its effects as well. Maybe you've learned some insight methods there that you can put to use at another time. So I also started with, the method that Goenkaji teaches, which goes back to Sayagyi Ubakin and some other teachers and monks in Myanmar. And it was very productive, of a lot of insight that really helped me in my life. It gave me a lot of equanimity. It gave me the, it basically bred in me the aspiration to go forth. So if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't be here as a bhikkhuni now. But it's not my main method now, but I know what it can offer. I know how to apply it to the mind and when. So yeah, it's good to practice different methods. We basically need to develop virtue, samadhi and wisdom. They're the 3 pillars there. The Eightfold Path can be divided into those 3. So virtue, samadhi, in other words, the kind of meditation you're doing now, and also the wisdom factor. So whichever order and however much emphasis you put on each, it's all good, I would say. Okay, I don't know if this is the same person or a different person. Actually, I'm not seeing the names. But anyway, when visiting a therapist, he wanted me to become angry. And when telling him that I usually aim to transform my anger into understanding and loving kindness, and that I could not really feel any anger, he reckoned that I'm a classic case of a meditator turning into a spiritual bypasser. What are your thoughts on this? He can't really know, nor can I, right? We have to be honest with ourselves as to what we're doing in our practice. If he actually wanted you to become angry, that seems a bit strange to me, because we're not supposed to create unwholesome states and states that are obviously painful for us. But if anger would arise and you would try to push it down, then it could be that you're avoiding something there. So it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, you say you usually aim to transform anger into understanding and loving kindness. It's a subtle point. Are we trying to transform it before we've really met it and understood it? Or are we allowing that meeting and understanding to transform it on its own? I tend to think if we hurry it along, then we're in danger of missing something. But we do need to have wisdom and loving kindness in order to hold it wisely. So you can check that out for yourself. Obviously, if you're stigmatizing anger, if you're stigmatizing any negative emotion and you're meditating to avoid those things, and all of us are doing it to some extent. I mean, if we're really, really honest, we don't want to feel those things. I mean, the natural tendency of the mind is to avert itself from those. If you find that's a pattern, then you can just look into that and see if you can gently turn toward it instead and see what the results of that are. But actually sort of getting you to become angry and thinking that if you're not displaying anger, then you're avoiding it, that I think is pretty faulty. So I don't really know what happened in that conversation or that session with your therapist, but I think it's an interesting territory to explore. And don't worry if you find you are bypassing certain things. I mean, we have to develop the strength to meet and face things step by step. I mean, I had an experience with the aforementioned friend, which is very informative in my life now that I can talk about it without being re-traumatized. But there I did have a sense that there was a lot of spiritual bypass, and I thought it was somehow my role as her friend to get her to realize that and to see that and to look at it. And unfortunately, I think it was all too much, too soon, because the habit of avoidance was so incredibly strong over, the whole life, really. And certainly, I think it was beyond the power of meditation alone to help. And they weren't willing to go to a therapist and to a counsellor. So in the end, I had to, we had to part ways. It wasn't healthy to be in that relationship. So I guess it just showed me that sometimes if the mind's, in her case, there was quite a lot of childhood trauma, and sometimes this bypass is actually a protective mechanism for us. So, we have to be ready to turn in and look at these things. I don't know, that's quite a complex and it's quite a complex area, really. So I hope that gives a little bit of help. Yeah. I don't know. Any more thoughts on anything? It is out of time, but I'll take one more comment or something from you. Yeah, sure.
She said, I thought this would be useful for
Oh.
kind of thing. So I really sort of went into it. So I was like,
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. Thanks for sharing. I'll share that with the Zoom room as well. She's saying that she's sending metta to this friend today, and almost straight after that, was it? That she offered you a book, and it was just the kind of book that she needed. Is that right? She bought it for you, yeah. So it just gave her that sort of sense that this metta is really connecting them, and it really works. Yeah. I also had an experience last night. I mean, it's not the same because I sent an email, but I sent an email to my teacher, to Ajahn Brahm, because I was kind of getting a bit down, just exhausted really last night. And so I sent an email and I was saying, now I've worked so hard to get this monastery, and now I'm worried because I'm going there alone. There's going to be so much work. I was just kind of getting my energy back together. And anyway, and then I don't know what happened. I must have gone to the loo, and he phoned me. He never just phones me, never, because we have to plan it. But anyway, he did. And that was really sweet because I knew that he was thinking of me. And then he said, okay, well, you go to bed now. I sort of missed him, right? So you go to bed now. So I was a bit like, but he was chanting for me. It just felt also very lovely, because sometimes we are being supported and protected by our friends and the people around us. We are connected. We really are. I don't know, there is a mother and daughter here. But I think this is probably common between mothers and daughters, that sometimes, the daughter calls and the mom says, I was just thinking about you, that's amazing. Or vice versa. There's this sense of telepathy. Does that happen? Yeah, it's very nice. Yeah, but again, we don't meditate for that reason, because if we're sending metta to someone because we want to have a good friendship with them, that sort of isn't quite unconditional. But yeah, we just send that metta, and it does have effects. Hi, Filippo. There's a little boy here. 5, are you 5 or 6? I forget. But you're the youngest one here. Happy New Year. He often comes to the online stuff. Hi, thanks for the Christmas card. It was beautiful. Handmade. Okay. So, that's the end of the Q&A. And now we're moving into the last meditation of the day, at least the one with the group. But of course, if it's still the middle of the day, you can carry on at home. Or you can carry on this evening if you wish. So I hope that that was sort of satisfactory. I'm sorry that we didn't have more time, but hopefully that was helpful. So we'll have a quiet meditation now, but I'll finish with maybe some blessings and a few words of loving kindness. And just to encourage you to see if you can relate to meditation as a gift to yourself, rather than something you have to do or perform. It's actually a break from all of that, you know. No one else can see what's going on inside you, so you're not being judged. The only judge is you, yourself. So just see if you can bring a light heart and a light touch to the meditation, and just enjoy that time to yourself, understanding how your mind works and how you can be kind. So as we're coming towards the end of the day and the meditation, maybe taking a few moments to share whatever happiness and peace, however humble it may seem, whatever happiness and peace we've developed with all beings. Starting with ourselves by wishing ourselves happiness, health, ease, whatever you truly wish for yourself. Feeling what those qualities mean. And allowing any feelings of peace, of well-being to start spreading. Perhaps imagining it coming out of your body like a golden light. Or maybe a soft mist, and just spreading towards everyone in this room. Carrying those beautiful wishes of loving kindness. May we all be happy. May we all be at peace. May we all be content. Fully at ease. Imagining everybody in this room happy and relaxed. Surrounded by this golden glow of good wishes. And spreading those good wishes further towards those who you're about to meet if you're leaving the in-person retreat, or those at your home. Even your dog or your cat. Those in the neighborhood and beyond. May all beings, wherever they are, any particular person who comes to mind, and all beings, may they all share our peace, our happiness. May they all be safe and well. And just allowing this metta to spread as far as it will, bringing any particular beings or all beings to mind, and wishing them well as I chant the final blessing for the day. Sabbe sata, sabbe pana, Sabbe Bhuta Sabbe Pugala Sabbe Atabhava Pariyapana Sabba Itiyo Sabbe Purisa Sabbe Ariya Sabbe Anariya Sabbe Deva Sabbe Manusa Sabbe Viniparika Avevahontu Abhyapajahontu Anigahontu Sukhiyatanam pariharantu Dukkam munjantu Yadalada sampadito Mawe gachantu Kamasaka. So those who know Ajahn Brahm's way, which is spread to me and most people here probably, we can do the 3 big sadhus. Sadhu means like well done or great, rejoicing, spreading happiness. So it's traditionally done at the end of Buddhist meditation, but we do it with gusto. Sadhu, come on. Sadhu. Sadhu. Very good. We even got the ha-has. It's excellent. Ajahn Brahm would be proud and pleased and happy. So may all beings be happy. And just thinking about all those who are not safe and who are desperately in need of peace. May somehow, through the power of our practice, they experience some of that peace, even for a moment. So that's the end of today. And I think Julian wants to say a few words, or is it up to me to say a few words?
Say a few words.
Sure. Okay, so this is about generosity, and normally it's not my role to do this, so I'm a bit embarrassed, but anyway, this is about generosity as a quality, and it's not about me receiving any personal gains, but it is that your generosity today will go towards our project, our charity, which is aimed at spreading these teachings and benefiting as many people as we can through both sharing the Dhamma but also developing a place for us to practice together, and for women who wish to train as monastics, which they don't yet have the opportunity to do in this country, not as fully ordained monastics, who are equivalent to monks. And that basically means it's not about status, it's actually about renouncing and following the training that the Buddha laid down, but also being able to establish our own communities as women, which tend to be, I would dare to say, a little bit more inclusive than some of the male models that we have. So we do tend to attract people from all kinds of different backgrounds and marginalised groups as well. And the more diverse the better, to my mind, and that also of course includes men and gender non-binary people, transgender people, anyone who suffers and wants their hearts to feel a little bit more freedom and peace. So any donations you're able to make will go towards that. Our treasurer at the moment is spreading the message that standing orders are very helpful, however much or little you can contribute, because this gives us a kind of sense of what's coming in on a monthly basis. And it's up to no individual. Sometimes people say, I can't support a monastery, I don't have enough. But it's not up to you, it's up to us as a community, and that community is worldwide. So whatever you can contribute is very, very gratefully received, and all adds up to support this cause and basically support us all. And it's not only financial generosity that counts, it's also gifts of service, gifts of time, even coming to stay at the monastery for a while to really grow it as a community, and stay for longer periods if you can, so that you can take away some of my admin. That's my real most biggest wish, that, you know, we can have people living in the monastery and helping on a daily basis, because it's not only the fruits. The fruits, in a sense, are the retreats, you know, and I think it's the same for Sheffield Insight too. The fruits are these retreats that they offer, but of course there have to be many people behind the scenes helping to run that organisation. So if you can get involved in some of these Dhamma organisations, you know, whether it's Sheffield Insight or London Insight or any other Buddhist group, or maybe even the Quakers, they also need some help. And if you donate to us, that goes to helping our organisation. And what it's really doing is giving us the opportunity to have a rounded and holistic spiritual practice. There was the question earlier about spiritual bypass. And if the practice is all about ourselves, it can be a kind of bypass, because we're bypassing the real purpose of this. You know, if the Buddha had sat in a cave for the last 45 years of his life after his enlightenment, none of us would be here today. But he didn't. He understood that his benefit, his greatest benefit, is in serving others. And the whole purpose, in a sense, of his enlightenment was to serve and to spread the Dhamma far and wide. So when we serve, we have the chance to practice every factor of the Eightfold Path, not just the meditation. I said that there are 3 limbs of practice: virtue, sila, calming the mind or serenity, samadhi, and wisdom, panya, sila, samadhi, panya. So if we only practice 1 or 2 of those, it doesn't work. My first teacher, Goenkaji, used to say, you know, now we have to talk about fees at the end of the retreat. And then he'd joke, he'd laugh, he'd say, what, fat fees for the fat teacher? No fat fees for the fat teacher. Your fees is your metta practice. That's your fee. And if you don't practice metta, it doesn't work.